Discarding in relationships, the why of things, part 2 of 15. In healthy, emotionally intelligent relationships, abrupt discarding is virtually non-existent. Most people work through challenges rather than suddenly abandoning someone, making it especially confusing when you encounter someone who discards without warning. Discarding in the context of relationships refers to the abrupt, often cruel, ending of a relationship, typically without warning or clear explanation. It's like flipping a switch. One moment the person seems fully engaged, and the next they have emotionally and often physically checked out. This behavior is common among individuals with cluster B personality traits and can leave those on the receiving end feeling blindsided, confused, and deeply hurt. Let's break down what discarding is and what it isn't before diving into why it happens across the different disorders. What it is: a sudden, often cold terminations of a relationship or connection, usually after an intense period of idealization. Discarding can come with little to no explanation, and the person doing the discarding may act as if the relationship never mattered to them. What discarding isn't: a natural or mutual end to a relationship where both parties agree to part ways after discussing their differences. It also isn't the same as taking time away from a relationship to reassess or heal. This is something else. If you need time away from someone to recharge and reconnect and think about your thoughts and your feelings, which I absolutely have done and other partners have done with me, it is a necessary step. Tell them that. Do not say you need space. Don't tell them that. Tell them you need time away. When someone says they need space, really often what they mean is, I need time to make sure that I don't look like an a-hole to my friends and that I look like the victim. And so I am going to spread rumors. I'm going to overhype and overblow things. I'm going to hint that things got physical or that things got, emotionally abusive or some crazy, ridiculous, completely unprovable and unobservable crap like that, when you can prove, especially through psychological assessments, therapy, and all that stuff, that you are not that person. You did not do what they think you did. Yeah. Your intentions were not what they were thinking. Yeah. And they'll even feign fear. I mean, it's harmful, especially as a veteran. And I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but I'm going to allow myself to do this. As a veteran who has been in multiple tours in combat locations, knows exactly where their switch is, exactly how to turn it on and how to turn it off. It's very insulting and disruptive because you're a normal, healthy individual, at least somewhat healthy, right? I mean, we all have our issues, but at least you've worked through them, right? And it's very emotionally and cognitively disruptive because you're thinking, oh crap, I know about veterans that have freaked out. I know about veterans that have snapped, right? Am I that veteran? Am I going to do that someday? Yeah, it took me a long time to finally realize, okay, no. And it was not only my therapist telling me this and my psychiatrist telling me this, but also AI. AI can look at things that are way broader and more in depth than any human ever possibly could. And when you throw in all of your results from your professional assessments, your self-assessments, even your handwriting and signature analysis, which AI is very good at doing, even though, yes, I get that pseudoscience, and have it do an in-depth personality profile on you based on what you're doing, and then ask it, and make sure you don't bias it, ask it, based on my personality profile, based on what you know about me, what are the chances that I would ever strike a partner? And if so, please give me those odds. If there are any factors that in my personality profile that would make it a reason I would strike a partner or something I need to be cautious about, please don't sugarcoat that. Please dig right into the negatives. If there are any, I can take it, right? Literally talk to it like a person, and it will lay it all out. And it did. It laid out all the reasons why I would never do that. And the probability of me doing that, it said, was so low that it would have a hard time calculating it, but it was well under 1%, because most veterans that freak out and snap, they have low insight. Okay. They're not self-aware usually, and they often have low education. These are factors, and AI knows this because it knows everything pretty much, although it can still hallucinate. You got to, as far as when it comes to research and all that stuff, it'll just make up research. So it doesn't do it all the time, but And it's getting much better at not doing it, but it still happens. So anyways, let's get back on track. Okay. So again, what discarding is: a sudden, often cold termination of a relationship or connection, usually after an intense period of idealization. Discarding can come with little to no explanation, and the person doing the discarding may act as if the relationship never mattered to them. What it isn't: a natural or mutual end to a relationship where both parties agree to part ways after discussing their differences. I've had this happen. It's the way it goes. You don't align. You got to move on. You both still love each other. You both still care about each other. If things align in the future, you're open to reconnecting. But this happens. This is part of being an adult, part of being a messy human, and just part of life. It doesn't mean that they all end, though. They only all end if you're the problem. It also isn't the same as taking time away from a relationship to reassess or heal. Why people discard. The reasons for discarding can vary significantly based on the specific disorder or traits the person may have. Here's how the motivation for discarding differs across various types of cluster B personality disorders. I've changed the names to focus on the core aspects of each, as there's a ton of misinformation and confusion out there surrounding cluster B. Remember, discarding behavior is often related to specific disorders, but not everyone with those traits will necessarily engage in this behavior. In other words, not everyone who's cluster B will discard people. But if someone is discarding someone, it's very likely they have a lot of cluster B traits. Whether they're diagnosed or not, it's just kind of how it goes. Because again, normal, healthy people do not do this. Discarding in a relationship is not a normal, healthy, emotionally intelligent behavior. So if someone does this, just know, no matter how hard it is to internalize, you dodged a massive bullet and years of emotional exhaustion, misery, and dealing with an emotionally stunted individual. And whatever you do, do not let them back in now that they showed their ass. The only caveat is if they can prove they are committed to working on themselves lifelong and have been doing so for years. But I still wouldn't recommend it. It's just not worth it when there are so many healthy, emotionally intelligent people out there. Don't be a sacrificial lamb for someone else's problems. So, let's look at why each person or each disorder discards. IDD, impulsive disregard disorder, or ASPD. Those with IDD discard others with little emotional attachment or remorse. They may see relationships as tools or stepping stones for their personal gain, so when a relationship no longer serves their needs, they swiftly cut ties. Discarding them allows to avoid consequences or the work required to maintain connections. Extreme self-focus disorder, or NPD. People with ESFD discard when their partner no longer provides the admiration, validation, or praise they crave. Sound familiar? They are deeply invested in maintaining an image of perfection, so when a partner begins to see that mask or challenges it, the discard comes swiftly. The individual may feel the need to eliminate anyone who threatens their grandiose self-image. EID, or emotional intensity disorder, BPD. With EID, discarding often occurs due to an intense fear of rejection or abandonment. The person may abruptly end the relationship to avoid being abandoned themselves. And the irony is that if you wouldn't have abandoned them, again, they did it to themselves. They may perceive even minor slights as major betrayals, triggering an impulsive emotional reaction to cut the person out of their life. The emotional storm can lead them to act out of desperation rather than logic. DASD, or dramatic attention-seeking disorder, HPD. For those with DASD, discarding is often a way to create drama or draw attention back to themselves. They may end relationships suddenly, only to attempt to re-enter them later, a cycle known as hoovering. Discarding provides them with an opportunity to become the center of attention again, either through the dramatic exit or the emotional response they provoke in the other person. The aftermath of discarding. Discarding can leave the discarded individual feeling deeply wounded. Often, they're left wondering what went wrong, questioning their self-worth, and struggling to process the abrupt loss. The manipulative nature of the discard makes it particularly painful because it often follows a period of intense idealization where the discarded person was placed on a pedestal and made to feel irreplaceable. For those with cluster B traits, discarding may not come with the same emotional weight. In fact, some may move on quickly to new relationships, continuing the cycle of idealization and discard without taking the time to reflect on the damage caused. So, as an aside, in my case, I moved on. Well, I didn't move on quickly, actually. It was over a year in intense EMDR therapy. But I did get into another relationship fairly quickly because there was a woman that I'd known. She'd met me. We'd talked. She was interested in being another partner because I am polyamorous. And the last person that I was with said they were, but they said solo polyamory, which gives me pause. But anyways, because once I looked that up, I was like, oh, you're basically just single. Just say you're single. Say you're single. It's okay to be single. And the problem is, if you do label yourself like that, be very careful, because it does tend to attract people who have an insecure attachment style, who have cluster B traits. Like, it's a great excuse for them, right? It's a great excuse for them to never commit. It's a great excuse for themselves internally that the relationships always end, because they're solo poly, right? Yeah, no, screw that. Screw that. Be an adult. Don't hide behind a label. But anyways, she had reached out. She had got my number off a friend and reached out, and her text to me, which I still have because I don't delete texts usually. The last person I was with, that's the only time I've ever deleted text threads, because I couldn't. I was trying to move forward, and I was actually truly in love with this person and loved her and was pheromonally attracted to her, like the trifecta, which I'd never had happen in my entire life. So that was rough. So I was trying desperately to wipe the slate clean and try to move forward, and it just didn't work. Like, I had to get into intensive therapy to move past it. But like I said, I'm glad I went through it. It delayed my own emotional codependence healing after my partner died. It delayed it a lot, but both my Rachel and my other partner, Charlene, at the time, were definitely normal, healthy people who were evolved. So they were willing to hold space for that. They understood where that was coming from. Rachel and I went to therapy together a couple of times because we were having some communication issues. And my therapist said it brilliantly. She was like, Rachel, getting Daniel to communicate on your emotional level is like trying to get a blind guy to see the color red. It's not going to happen. And she's like, at the same time, Daniel, you need to not hit her with so many data and facts, because she doesn't work that way. Okay, our communication skyrocketed after that. So it already was above average, but because we're both those types of people, she committed to a guy for 10 years, her husband, who unfortunately died of a stroke, and she took care of him at least the last 4 years, if not longer. And she never cheated on him, as far as I know, and as far as she's told me, which I do believe her. I've been with her for over 2 years now. No, not quite 2 years. I think it'll be 2 years in November 17th. So yeah, I mean, I told the last person she was worth it. Clearly she wasn't. I thought she was, but Rachel is definitely worth it because she's proven herself. She's proven herself time and time again, as have I. So it's a good thing. Anyways, and she's in her own therapy, so it's good. Therapist isn't a bad thing. Like, you can be the most emotionally mature, stable individual, and it's still good to see a therapist at least every, once a month or two, just to make sure everything's good, just to make sure you're not slipping back into any old habits or, any, I don't know, self-destructive thought processes or whatever. It's good. It's good. So, like I said, especially since 10 to 15% of people have self-awareness and the rest don't, but they think they do. That's terrifying. Anyways. All right, I'm done with the tangents. Gonna keep going. So again, those with DASD, discarding is often a way to create drama or draw attention back to themselves. That's histrionic personality disorder. The aftermath of discarding. Discarding can leave the discarded individual feeling deeply wounded. Often, they're left wondering what went wrong, questioning their self-worth, and struggling to process the abrupt loss. The manipulative nature of the discard makes it particularly painful because it often follows a period of intense idealization where the discarded person was placed on a pedestal and made to feel irreplaceable. Now, I definitely wasn't made to feel irreplaceable, but I mean, yeah, there was a lot. It was a lot. For those with cluster B traits, discarding may not come with the same emotional weight. In fact, some may move on quickly to new relationships, continuing the cycle of idealization and discard without taking the time to reflect on the damage caused. Understanding this pattern is crucial for anyone involved with someone who has cluster B traits. Recognizing the signs early on can help prevent deeper emotional harm and allow for healthier boundaries, or even in some cases, barriers to be set.